another episode of Technical Explanation, and today our guest is Toby Dunlap. How you doing, Toby?
I'm well, Bryce. Thank you. It's good to
Uh,
be with
it's so great that we can make this happen. I know I had some stuff on my calendar, you had some stuff on your calendar, but in the end, we figured it out because that's what wrestlers do. We figure it out. So I want to start at the very beginning. For those who don't know you, if they're in Ohio and they don't know you, then they probably aren't involved with wrestling. But for those that don't know you, can you give us a little bit of your background and in wrestling and officiating?
Sure. I mean, I started wrestling in elementary school. Typically back then, in the early 70s, I'm dating myself, but, there weren't that many youth programs around. So what the head wrestling coach would do, he'd come down to the elementary school and distribute flyers and announce that he would be giving clinics for, on weekends for about 6 weeks. And at the end of that, we'd have it like an in-house little mini tournament. And that's basically how I got started. And that was in the 5th grade, I believe. I wrestled in high school. I wrestled for a small, at that time, it was single A, double A combined school up near the lake called Fairport Harbor. Wrestling wasn't one of the strongest programs at the school, but a lot of the football players and baseball and track athletes in the spring would wrestle to keep in shape. Obviously, the basketball players had their own sport, but basically, that's how I got started.
Didn't you have like 4 different wrestling coaches in your high school career or something like that?
Yes, I did.
That's rough, man.
And in fact, 3 of those coaches were basically the head football coach, and he would be given the assignment of being the wrestling coach, regardless if he knew anything about wrestling or not. And unfortunately, that was a detriment. But my senior year, we finally got a football coach who was also a wrestling coach. His name was Harry Peets, and he came over from Newberry High School. And at the time, they had a very strong, single A, double A program. And I think back in '85, they evolved and they actually won the state tournament under Coach Cliff Reedy. Despite that, I was a district qualifier more junior and senior years, but never made it to the big show. Mm-hmm. And, wrestling was in my blood. Did not wrestle in college, but after I graduated, I volunteered as an assistant wrestling coach at the high school that I graduated from. As I said, that was Fairport Harding High. And I helped out for a couple of years. And when we started our family, time I got into a time crunch, obviously, with the young family and the like. And the next best thing was officiating. Officiating, you could basically schedule your own time, take as many matches as you want, and take the matches that you want, and the ones that you don't accept. So consequently, that got me started on my officiating career, and I've been an official now for 41 years, technically 31 years, because the last 10 years I haven't been actively officiating on the mat. But I've been involved as a state rules observer, going out and observing young officials and mentoring them. And then 3 years ago, became the DOD, and that's the Director of Officiating Development for Wrestling for the OHSAA. And, that's my current position now. I also help out with the Northeast District Athletic Board as what they call their wrestling sports coordinator. And basically what I'm a liaison between the sectional and district tournaments in the Northeast District and the Northeast District Athletic Board. So I'm sort of their go-to person when it comes to wrestling.
That's a pretty good district, of a wrestling district too.
Yes, there are a lot of teams, particularly in D1. D3, we have some good teams, but and D2 as well. But, I think in all 3 districts or classifications, I should say classifications, I think we're reaching a state of parity across Ohio. I guess the D3 hotspot now is the Northwest. D1 is still, Northeast, but Columbus and Cincinnati are really catching up. And, D2 is Northwest and Central. So, it is what it is.
Yeah.
But importantly, though, I still have a foot in the door, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely. That's awesome. But for those of those listening that don't know Ohio geography, in that district D1, you've got St. Ed's, right? Wadsworth,
yes, St. Ed's, Wadsworth, Brecksville,
Louisville, Brecksville.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Is Maslin Perry in there too?
Oh, Maslin Perry's in there.
Jeez Louise.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a loaded district.
A good gig.
D1 level.
Yeah. And I just also, in all of those years of service to wrestling too, you've racked up quite a few awards too. So I just want to go through this list too, right? And you correct me if I'm wrong. But in 2004, you were inducted into the Medina Invite Hall of Fame, right? That's a huge tournament in Ohio, Medina.
That is correct.
All right. Then the Ohio Wrestling Official Association in 2008, you were inducted to their Hall of Fame.
Correct.
Then Top Gun, one of my top favorite tournaments.
Awesome.
It's so cool. Top Gun Hall of Fame in 2019. I skipped over one. The Officials Association of Ohio Wrestling Association Official of the Year 2011. I may have added an extra official or something in there. I don't know. But is that accurate, right? And
yeah,
then,
that was the.
And then OHSAA Officials Hall of Fame in 2019 too. That's
correct.
That is pretty impressive, Toby. That's awesome.
Well, thank you. I mean, that's what happens when you're when you're around too long. So.
Nah, I don't know if you're around too long. That's awesome, man. Though they don't just give those out to anyone. So let's talk a little bit about officiating. We're a couple of months out from the season. Hopefully with this season, it's a little bit closer to normal. We're back at the shot, right? I think.
Yes, that's awesome. And there was a lot of, reservation in the wrestling community. Last year, obviously, we went to the 3 sites for D1, D2, and D3. Obviously for COVID reasons. Mm-hmm. And the thinking was, well, geez, they separated the tournament. It's never going to get back to the shot. But I'll tell you, behind the scenes, that was always the thinking that we will get back to the shot from the OHSAA perspective. Tyler Brooks, that was imperative that we get back to the shot. So the announcement was made, I believe, late spring, early summer, and it's etched in stone now. The contract has been signed.
That's awesome, and I can only speak from my experience. But last year was good for me because I got to actually be on the floor of my first state tournament and do media, and I wouldn't have if it would have been at the shot probably. So that was cool selfishly. But when you look at it, it felt like, and I get it, it was completely necessary, and we have to be thankful that we even got to wrestle last year. We need to have that mindset and be grateful for the season that we did have, right?
Absolutely.
But taking it to 3 high schools felt a little bit like back in the 70s when they're at like Otterbein, St. John, and wherever else. I know Otterbein because my dad wrestled there, and I know St. John just because who doesn't know St. John? So it just felt like a step back, especially when our tournament is one of the best. I mean, hands down. The officiating, the presentation, just that video before finals. Oh my goodness! Like
the pomp and circumstance, so to speak.
That's exactly. So that was great news, and I'm sure coaches and officials around Ohio rejoiced alike. So yeah, hopefully we get back to a normal season. What have you been doing behind the scenes, you guys, to get ready? What's it typically look like, ramping up for the season?
Well, it's a 24/7 endeavor. We have a lull in the spring, but basically we wait for the new rules to come out of the National Federation of High Schools, and that's sort of the quote unquote the NCAA governing body of high schools. The National Federation of High School Sports, and we, the acronym is NFHS, And they are the governing body for all 50 athletic associations in the 50 states, for all sports, including wrestling. And the rules are promulgated by them. And then once the rules are etched in stone, approved by the National Federation, they come down to the states, and we go through and interpret them. And as I speak, I am preparing our rules interpretation presentation of the new rules for the 2021-2022 season. And that's, the next step. I'll take that out before we go live. Generally, what we do, the rules interpretation meeting for officials and coaches, which is mandatory, which I present online. And then we also go out and spread religion, so to speak, face-to-face meetings to roll out the new rules interpretations to various venues across the state through our state rules interpreters who I work in conjunction with. I'm sure you're familiar in the Northwest with Jim Vreeland. He's my predecessor, DOD, and now he's a state rules interpreter. Ray Anthony is another one of our state rules interpreters, and Dick Lowenstein from the Cincinnati area is our fourth state rules interpreter. So we go out and we spread religion, but the first event is we convene a meeting with the local state rules interpreters, or I should say local rules interpreters from the 20th local associations, officials associations across the state. So we try to get them up to speed, get them on board. So when they have their meetings, they could go over the new rules with their membership. And as I said, my role is to ensure that the way we want to interpret the rules from the National Federation level, or if there are any state modifications, which are very rare, we make sure that we push that down to the membership. So everybody's on the same page, including our coaches.
And somewhere in between all of that, the points of emphasis should be coming out soon to coaches. Doesn't that come from the National Federation? It's usually like a poster.
Yes, it's a PowerPoint presentation, which I already have.
You do?
That I'm sort of, what I do, I take what they have and I sort of mold it around what the OHSAA wants to convey to the coaches. And so I edit that and make sure that we roll it out with emphasis toward Ohio wrestling.
When does that rollout occur? Because why I ask is I know a guy that's got it now. And one of my things is most coaches, some coaches will invite an official in and have them talk, and talk about the season. And I think that's a missed opportunity if people aren't, by the way, and more on that later. But then some other coaches, it's like, hey, I got this. I'm going to hang it up in the wrestling room or wherever they get to practice, and not much is thought of it, right? So then you get into the first week, and it's a tournament, not a duel, and you don't get your pre-match, and you're like, what? We're calling it this way now, Yeah. And that's really a disservice to the kids. And so what we're thinking here at the show is we want to do a couple shows on those points of emphasis and really break it down from an official. So maybe we don't have as many people not knowing those at the beginning of the year and learning the hard way.
Exactly. Well, Bryce, the next step that is going to happen, I am going to attend a webinar that is that is presented by the National Federation. That'll be next week.
Oh, cool. And
basically, the presentation that I have, the National Federation will take all 50 states through that. And of course, I represent Ohio and the 49 other representatives from the various state jurisdictions that will also be in attendance. And from there, we get the sort of the interpretation that the National Federation wants to convey in terms of the new rules. And from there, probably in mid-October, we will have our state rules interpretation webinar, which I present, and which, as I said before, the SRIs and myself will take out to the various regions on a face-to-face basis to ensure that coaches and officials alike are cognizant and are aware of the new rules and how they will be interpreted. Consonant with that, the Ohio Wrestling Coaches Association annually has a meeting in Columbus, generally around November timeframe, and we roll out our rules interpretation meeting there as well for all the coaches in attendance. So we covered several different ways, and if you miss one, you have the opportunity to participate in another, or however many of these meetings that you want to.
I think it's great that we just had this conversation to get all of these opportunities that are out there, and you'd be mad not to take advantage of them, right? So and also just to see and hear all the moving parts and all the communication and everything that has to happen in order for these meetings to happen is impressive.
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of behind the scenes work that goes on that really no one appreciates. And before I move on, I really have to sort of give a attaboy to Tyler Brooks. He's a wrestling administrator at the OHSAA, who really was the point person last year, enabling us to have a season. And, I was basically in communication with Tyler, almost every day before last year, before the season started and during the season. And what he did to ensure that we did have a season was just phenomenal. That, nobody knows how much time and effort that he put in behind the scenes to enable, last year's seasons to take place. And
yeah.
So kudos to Tyler Brooks.
Yeah, and I haven't got to meet him, but one of the things that I was impressed by is I believe, I know he showed up at the D3 state tournament. I believe he made a trip to each tournament just to make sure and see how it was going. Like
not only a trip, several trips.
Yeah, I know, but that to me showed this guy's in it. Not only to make it happen, but then also to make sure he's there, and if he's needed, he'd be ready. So that was pretty cool to me.
Yeah, awesome. He just did an awesome job.
So, so we have an officials crisis. This comes up in every episode, and that's the reason we're doing this show. Is I don't know if it's a crisis, it's a shortage. Shortage, and we need to get more officials. So what I want to kind of shift the conversation to is, what are we doing currently to try to get more officials? What could we maybe do? Some of that stuff. So could you talk a little bit about, what are some of the initiatives to try to get some more officials? Because we have quite a few that are going to be retiring in the not so distant future. Is that accurate?
Not only retiring in the not so distant future, but have retired, in the past, several years. And as you mentioned, there is a shortage. Just to give you some numbers, at one point, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, we had roughly about 800 registered officials in Ohio. And that number has fluctuated between, 600 and, 700 in the last couple of years. But now I talked to Charles Anderson, who is the sort of the manager of officials at the OHSAA. And about 2 weeks ago, he said that to date, we have about, 500 registered officials that have renewed. So yes, there is a significant shortage of officials, wrestling officials in Ohio. So much so that last year was a sort of a one-off year as well. Due to COVID, many officials elected not to officiate, and obviously for good reason. And we were really down. And I think as we came into this year, a lot of those officials chose not to renew, which is unfortunate. And consequently, we're because of the COVID crisis, we're even took more of a hit. We are trying, back in the day, to recruit. It was basically word of mouth. We would go out and, high school students or college students or graduates would come up to, an official and say, hey, I'd like to be official. What can I do? And, we would set that person on the right track and put him in touch with the requisite people who he needed to be in touch with. But that doesn't work in this day and age anymore. Obviously, we get some officials recruited by word of mouth, but we're still at a big deficit. Several years ago, maybe 10 years ago or so, the OHSAA rolled out an officials training program where we have trainers across the state. Each association, we have about 20 local officials association, has their own trainer. And that trainer has to go through a litany of steps to become a trainer. And basically, the trainers in each association are responsible for training, young officials who are interested in becoming a registered official. But, I know in my association in the Northeast, we're lucky over the last 10 years or so to have maybe 2 or 3 new officials come into a class each year. And through attrition, maybe one of those will be around within 2 years. So as you could imagine, as officials retire and a lack of new officials coming in to replace, every year we fall that much further behind. But what we're doing now, we're rolling out these programs. We're basically asking our associations across the state to go out into the high schools now and recruit high school students. Some of our trainers are also educators and have worked. A lot of them are teachers, and they have worked a curriculum into their classes where young high school students can take a course and get credit for it. And so we're starting to try to roll out programs like that to try to get them young, and hopefully they will stick with it as they graduate, or even through high school. They can officiate at a certain level. Mm-hmm. We're also going out to the colleges, wrestling rooms, asking coaches if we could come in and make our spiel to attract college wrestlers who are currently obviously students. And it's a way that they could learn how to become an official, become a registered official. And although we don't get rich working matches, it's a way that they could supplement their college expenses through officiating. If they don't have practice or a match on a particular weekend or a particular day.
Yeah, I think what's awesome is a lot of these things other officials have been saying, and so it's good that the message is consistent. Like talking to wrestlers and stuff like that. And in one of my conversations, it occurred to me that officials, when you see the official in wrestling, most of the time it's during competition, right? I mean, maybe you see one if your coach invites them in at the beginning of the year to go over the points of emphasis. But most of the time you see them, you're at a tournament, you're in competition mode, right? And yes. And when you're young that way, maybe you're viewing them as adversarial, because you don't really understand. You're young, you don't really understand how much time your coach is putting in, let alone the officials that you see every other week, right? And so, to me, if that's true, and this is just my theory, I guess, if that's true, then the more times that officials can actually interact with students, whether they be high school or college, outside of the competition area, that makes complete sense. Like they get to see you as a human, not just the person that's got the whistle and the stripes that could determine the outcome of the match, right? So what I've been saying lately, and I don't know if it makes sense, but you've got your wrestlers, there's different levels of wrestlers, right? You've got your ones that are going to go on, they're elite, they're going to go compete at D3, D2, D1, and maybe you can get them to officiate, but wrestling at college schedule's pretty daunting, right? Then you got your kids that were really good, but they didn't get a look, they didn't get an offer. But if you're really good, you love the sport, why aren't we talking to them after districts or the week after state or something like that, and just saying your journey doesn't have to end here. just because you didn't get a deal, a scholarship or an offer, you can still be involved in the sport. Become an official, make some money.
Absolutely. Point very well taken, Bryce. We are going out, for example, this is sort of in meat, but during our pre-match talks, we're encouraging our officials to make a spiel. As you mentioned, when you're, for example, at a tournament, there's a lot of downtime. A lot of wrestlers are just walking around or sitting on the bleachers in between matches. We're encouraging our officials to sit down and sort of give them the spiel. I mean, if you love wrestling, once it's in your blood for life. And if you love wrestling and, you could either coach, you could become a intimate spectator, or you could become an official. And if you don't have the time to coach, why not, and you love wrestling, why not become an official? As I said before, you could set your own schedule. You could take the matches that you want, refuse the matches that you don't want or don't want to get involved in. And gosh, you have the best seat in the house. And, you do get paid for it.
Yeah.
You don't get rich, but it covers your expenses and maybe a little past that, but absolutely.
Yeah. And one of the things I think from wrestling, when you start, you said you started in 5th grade, right?
Yeah.
So you start at a young age like that. You make friendships over the years, and they're from other schools and everything else, right? And that's the wrestling part. Then you get into coaching or officiating, and now you can keep this wrestling family because it's a family.
Oh, absolutely.
And I don't know why you wouldn't want to be as much a part of it as possible, because the wrestling community is just awesome. So that's awesome. Sounds like you got a lot of stuff going. We here at this show, that's our goal, is to help any state do what they need to do to get more officials too. So the more that we can have these great conversations, I think it's going to help. Hopefully that's the goal.
Oh, absolutely. That is the goal.
So you had 31 years on the mat, right? And then
yes,
you said 10 off, so 41. That's a lot of wrestling. Do you care sharing some of your favorite moments, like your favorite tournaments or matches or things that you're just like, man, I'm so glad I do this?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, as you mentioned in my bio, I've worked the Medina tournament, the Top Gun tournament, the CIT tournament, that's the Catholic Invitational, as well as the state tournament. And, a lot of high profile finals matches that I've been involved with. But I think the one match that really came to mind happened back in, it was a CIT in 1991, I believe. I was at Lake Catholic, in my backyard.
Yep.
And I wasn't originally hired as an official. I was a very young official at the time. And Coach Tim Armelli, who was the coach at the time at Lake Catholic, won a state championship there, requested that I be given a chance. So I was the young guy, the new guy on the block. He brought me in, and I officiated through the finals. But for some reason, in the finals, I drew I guess you could call it the feature match. It was 135 between Dan Carcelli, Benedictine, and Dominic DeSabato of DeSales. And I think it was DeSales, or maybe it was Reedy. But to make a long story short, Dominic was, DeSabato was the returning D3 130-pound champion, and Carcelli was the returning D2 130-pound champion. And this year they're at 135. So I drew the match, and wow, was it a match. I mean, officials have a word that they call burn. And what that means, if you see a maneuver, you don't make the call as you see it. You just let it burn. You hesitate and let it develop, because before you know it, if you award the points too early, they're out of it, and you made a premature call. So that match went back and forth like that, and I tell you, it went down to the wire. I think it was 6-5 in favor of Dan Carselli, and they both went on that year to win their respective weight classes and their respective divisions. So that put my officiating career on the map.
That was your first tournament?
No, that was not my first tournament.
Your first high profile
tournament, yes. And the next year, I made my first state tournament. So it really put me into the know, so to speak, of up and coming officials.
That's awesome. And then DeSabato went on to wrestle at Ohio State then, I think, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, so.
And Carselli, I think, went to Cleveland State.
Okay.
And finished his career.
That's awesome. Any other ones that just jump out at you? I love hearing wrestling stories, especially from people who have the best seats in the house.
I think this was, I can't remember what year it was, but Blair and Ed's. The match was at, and back in the day, they went back and forth for the proverbial national championship.
Yeah.
And that particular year it was hosted by Ed's, and Greg Urbis gave me a call and asked me to officiate the match. I said, sure. So I officiated the match, and whoever won that match would be declared the proverbial national champion in the high school ranks. What a match it was! It went down to the last match. Ed's pulled it out with a 1-point victory, and claimed the proverbial national championship. But each match, when there were a couple falls each way, but each match, apart from the falls, went down to the wire. 6-5, 3-2. I mean, I don't normally perspire when I officiate, but I was drenched. And it might have had something to do. I think Urbis or Heffernan might have turned the temperature up in the gym. Because they wrestle under those conditions every day. But
yeah, whatever it takes to win. That's awesome.
I'll never forget that match. Yes, it was awesome.
Thanks for sharing those with me. That's awesome. I think it's cool for people to hear those stories about, look, if you do this long enough and you put the work in, you could be at the best seat in the house for some of these matches and watch these kids before they go into college and do great things, right? Because that St. Ed's and Blair team had to have a handful of D1.
Oh, yes.
If it was in the mid 90s, yeah.
This was, I believe, was in 2000. It could have been 2008.
Oh, well, still, I mean, it's Ed's and Blair.
But, but they would go head to head, year in and year out.
Yeah, because then Buxton would have been the coach then, still, right?
Yes.
So yes, Buxton versus Urbis. So how did that pre-meeting go?
It was very intense. So.
I want to hear about that pre-meeting. What do you remember about it?
Well, he was very quiet. But one thing that I would have to convey here, Ohio always used the 215-pound weight class, and also the heavyweight. But in order to qualify for heavyweight, you had to weigh at least 215 for minimum weight.
Okay.
So Greg Urbis, the gentleman that he is and gentleman that he was, wanted to ensure that I conveyed that to Buxton, to ensure that he knew what the minimum weight was. This is before weigh-ins, and to let him know that we're using 215, and for his heavyweight, he had to be at least 215 as a minimum weight, which is a Ohio modification. So Buxton would not have been aware of the Ohio modification rule, and Greg Urbis wanted me to ensure that Buxton was aware of that.
That sounds just like Greg Urbis.
Absolutely.
There's a million of those stories, and that's awesome. So I want to talk about another benefit of officiating: hospitality rooms. Hey, can you adjust your camera just a little bit, so just to get a little? Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
Yeah. Hospitality rooms. Best
my
hospitality room you've ever seen, ever had.
Well, first of all, let me preface that by an official will judge what tournament he or she wants to work at, judging on the quality of the hospitality room.
Well, you're nuts if you don't think coaches pick the tournaments that they go to for that same reason too.
I mean, there are a lot of good hospitality rooms out there, but the best, Top Gun.
Top Gun. Yeah.
Top Gun.
What do you get?
Yeah.
What do you get?
Oh, I mean, they'll bring in the pizza, but it's the homemade stuff, that they bring in. They'll bring in ham and pork and pulled pork, and it's just amazing. Another one that comes to mind is the Hepner tournament that Austintown Fitch hosts.
Okay.
The Friday of the tournament, they host in their hospitality room a walleye fry. They literally will fry the walleye, breaded walleye, outside of the gym area, and deep fry it and bring it into the hospitality room. I mean, gosh, you can't beat that.
That's nothing says Ohio like that.
Right? Absolutely.
Hey, question about Top Gun. My school that I went to, I was a little bit young at that time, wrestled there in the 90s. We had a pretty good team. I think it was one of those things where you only bring the ones that aren't going to have a nightmare of a tournament, right? So we had someone make the finals, but before the finals they had like army someone in the army come down from like the ceiling, and then he did this jump rope routine. Do they still do that?
Yeah, on every year. I mean, for a long time, I think the Army, and I'm not sure if they still do, but the Army was one of their main sponsors. So before the finals, they would host a show where your Army Rangers or whatever they were would rappel down from the ceiling of the gym or the rafters of the gym, which was awesome.
Yeah.
And every year they'll do something different.
That's awesome. I think I might have been like in 4th grade, and I thought that, and the fact that if you won the tournament, you got a pair of shoes. I thought that was the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, ASICS was another sponsor that would provide the shoes and would also outfit the officials with nice, apparel like gym bags with ASICS all over it.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Cool. So let's shift back a little bit to wrestling and rules. As a spectator, and you're probably just going to have to guess here or whatever, but what do you think is the most misunderstood aspect of wrestling? Or maybe someone that's a parent that's thinking their kid wants to wrestle and they're like, I don't know if that's for you. Like, what do you think people don't understand about wrestling?
Well, a lot of people really haven't seen what scholastic or folk style wrestling is all about, or even freestyle or Greco. What they see is what they see on TV, WWE. And there are a lot of parents, a lot of grandparents who entertain questions from their kids. Hey, I want to wrestle. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, that's dangerous. I don't want you doing that. So that's one of the issues I think that people misunderstand about it. Another issue is they don't realize how much work and dedication is attached to the sport. That if you really want to do well, you really have to put in the time. And it's not only during the season, it's 24/7, 365. If you want to aspire to be the best, that's what you have to do. And, that's a misconception that you just could do your work in season and, you're going to achieve your goals. But
and every team has that group of wrestlers, right?
Right, exactly.
Just the amount of that's what wrestling's great. It's any size, because of the weight classes can do it. And you know what? If you just want to wrestle JV, if that's cool with you, and you want to hang with your buddies and work your tail off, cool.
Absolutely. And Bryce, it's you'll get out whatever you put into it, and that's the same with officiating. You get out with whatever you put into it. So if your goal is just to be part of a team and participate, then sure, go to practice every day, but you don't necessarily have to work 365, 24/7. But if you do want to aspire to be the best, you have to do that. But it's not for everyone, and everyone doesn't have to do that. You whatever your goals are, you set them and put in the requisite work.
Yeah.
Period.
And we're both speculating here, right? I mean, that's a question. This is just a question to ponder, but hopefully, like the coverage and the performance of our men and women this year at the Olympics, you know, can show people how amazing the sport is.
Awesome.
But on the flip side of that too, like when we're bleeding all over the place and have to take, that probably doesn't help grandma and grandpa convince little
Right.
Johnny to wrestle.
Exactly. So yeah, it's tough, but I tell you, some of the toughest fans that I've ever run up against is grandma up in the stands.
Hey, I'll tell you, there's something to that. A wrestler is only as tough as their mom. You heard it here first. It's true. It's true. All right. Just a couple more questions, because with all of your experience and what you get to do for the OHSAA, are there any rules or things that you think should, or wish maybe were more explored again or created or brought back or introduced into folk style?
Well, this the way I'm going to answer that, it's not necessarily a rule that's going to affect what goes on the mat, but it's a rule that we do have an Ohio modification for our state tournament series, is what we call weighouts. The National Federation requires a weigh-in. For example, if you have a multi-day tournament, you weigh in on, let's say it's a Friday, Saturday tournament. You weigh in on Friday, and you also weigh in again on Saturday morning, which means that, if you're right on weight, you're going to have to float those pounds the next day to weigh in. What I would like to see is the National Federation adopt a weigh out policy, giving the opportunity to the wrestlers to weigh out the night before the second day and to make weight. And if they don't make weight, they will have the opportunity the next morning to try again. And, back in the day when I was wrestling, they ran I think a 2-year experiment where we would weigh in the first day of sectionals, and we did not have to make weight the second day, but we would still have to weigh in because they wanted to collect statistics. And, some wrestlers were at least 10 pounds overweight. They drink that water, they gain their water weight back. So, they're wrestling 10 pounds above their weight. But in this day and age, that doesn't happen. We have what we call a weight management program, where before the season, the athletes are hydration tested and caliper tested, and their lowest minimum weight based on their body fat is determined. And then they're giving a weight reduction program from day one through day whatever, and wherein they have to, they can't lose more weight than what is indicated in their weight reduction program. So that way they're not really cutting weight at a exorbitant amount, exponential amount. For example, not cutting 10 pounds a day before a match. And this discourages that. And I think Jim Vreeland did a study where at our district tournament, or maybe even one of the sectional tournaments for a couple of years, he would take the weigh out weight, and even though the wrestlers didn't have to weigh in the next morning, they were asked to come back voluntarily to weigh in. And basically, the average weight gain was 2 to 3 pounds, period. Not the 10 to 15 pounds that you would expect. And that's because of the weight management program is very progressive, very safe, very deliberate, and very calculated. So you're not making that extreme weight reduction at the last minute, and that's for safety's sake.
You'd have my vote for that. I mean,
that's the rule that I would like to see changed.
Yeah,
that's the rule that Ohio would like to see changed. So we've been working on it, but we never seem to make headway with it.
Yeah, I mean, it really has. It's changed a lot for the better. I get to coach junior high, and we have very few wrestlers, so we practice in the same room as our high school because we're allowed, because we have 3 kids. And it's different, right? They know right out of the gate, and that expectation and everything is set, which I think they need. There's no kid that's like, oh, in the middle of the year, oh, I got to certify at this weight. And then they're dropping, like you said, 10 pounds in a week, let alone 10 pounds the day before. And then
Exactly.
putting it on, and then they're 15 pounds heavier when they wrestle. I mean, I've wrestled, I've seen people put on the weight after the 2-hour weigh-ins. Like, you know, it used to happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's great, man. One other thing I want to touch on is just about how people can become officials. So if there's anyone listening right now, you know, you can go to the website, right, and sign up for the classes.
Yes, absolutely. You could go to the OHSAA website under officiating. There's a drop-down menu, and there's a sort of a link you could click on that is sort of a primer on what you need to do, the steps you need to take to become official. So, you know, basically, you know, you sign up, they'll send you the rule book, and basically what you can do is get in touch with a trainer from a local officials association in your area. For example, in the Northeast District, we have 5 different associations. I think in the Northwest, there are 5 associations as well. And you get in touch with one of those associations, and they set up classes. And at the end of those classes, they will give you an open book examination. And if you pass the open book examination, you'll get your initial license. And after 1 year, you could upgrade that to a class 1 that enables you to officiate at the varsity level.
Yeah, it really is. It's eye-opening. I did this when I was a high school senior. I got licensed because I got injured, so I was done wrestling. And so right at the beginning of the year, so I actually officiated junior high matches my senior year. So it's really a cool process. And again, open book. It's like, if you're paying attention, you won't even need the book. But I mean,
right, it's not rocket science.
Yeah. And you know, if you've wrestled it all before, some of it's like, oh, really? This question?
Yeah.
But I guess my question about that is, so I'm very familiar with that process. And I'm glad that we got that out there where other people can learn about it too, and check out becoming one. My question is there any talk or any movement about trying to make some of those classes accessible online? Because it's probably tough for some people I think it's 8 weeks, right, of classes to physically go, you know, do all of that stuff. Is there a way to make it digital, or is that just something that's not possible?
No, I think that's very much possible. And I think that's a great suggestion. It's something that's been in the back of our minds, my mind in particular, in this day and age. You know, last year proved that we could do it digitally. Our meetings with district board members, with officials, with coaches, were very efficiently conducted online, just as you and I are doing right now.
Yeah.
And there's no reason why it can't be. And in fact, there are tools that we could use that really would make it very efficient to conduct online. So yes, absolutely. That's something that I'm going to be looking into and perhaps trying to bring to fruition in the not too distant future. But no, great suggestion. Absolutely.
I just think it's, yeah, especially now, like you said, and that's what I was driving at, is there are people now that still haven't returned to work, their physical place, and probably never will, because companies have realized the same thing is, wait a minute, we can trust our employees and they can do their job from their home.
I'm one of those people. One of those people.
Me too. A couple other things though. So on that same thing, you know, we need more officials. Everything that we're talking about is how to make it easier, reduce the barriers, the friction for more people to become officials. I had a great talk earlier this week with Brian Nicola, Vanessa Oswald, and Mark Neiman. And we were talking about women's wrestling and how, you know, we have official shortage right now, but now we're adding more tournaments and more people to compete. And there are these women. And so that complicates things too, because what you might think is, okay, we'll just do the female tournament on Sunday. Well, now your officials have been working their regular job all week, maybe Friday, probably Saturday, and then you're asking them to do it again Sunday. One, I don't know if I'd want to do that. And two, you got to be tired. You know what I mean? Like after 3 days of officiating. So one of the things we talked about is how do we get young ladies that just discovered wrestling that aren't going to go off and wrestle in college, how do we get them to become officials? Because
awesome.
But because think about this though, like it doesn't happen until you see someone like you doing it, right? So like for guys, most of the time you see guy wrestling coaches and guy officials, and oh, I could do that. If you're a young lady and you just started wrestling and your coach is a male and all the officials are males, you might think, well, I can't do that, right? And there are female officials out there. In fact, I'm going to have one on the show in a couple episodes. But I really think that's another place where we could really grow this, grow officials and obviously
absolutely.
Grow the sport.
Wrestling is actually a growing sport in terms of participation in Ohio, and that's solely because of our women, our girls, coming into the sport. And I think it's awesome, and I think that's a great suggestion to reach out and maybe encourage our young ladies to think about becoming officials. That's something I know that Sean Andrews of Marysville is very in tune with women's or girls, ladies wrestling, and maybe he's someone I can reach out to maybe encourage to.
Well, it was really encouraging actually to have a female's perspective, Vanessa, on the call too, in there, and she gave some really good insight too. And this ties back to if we could do this digitally, is as a young lady, sometimes it'd be intimidating to go into a room full of guys, and to become an official, right? But if there was an opportunity for them to do it online, or maybe do it with all other females that want to become officials, who knows? Who knows? Just trying to meet them where they're at. So it's
that's great information.
I don't know. I just get to talk to people. They have the great ideas, and I'm just relaying.
But great insights. Great insights that normally you wouldn't consider until you hear it from the a person such as Vanessa, who's intimately involved.
Yeah, and she's awesome. That was awesome. I can't wait to get that one live. Hey, Toby, I've kept you for an hour now. I really appreciate it, man. This has been a blast. I hope we can do it again, but I know you're going to be pretty busy coming up here soon.
Well, Bryce, absolutely. Thank you for having me. It was an honor to be on with you. And definitely, if you want to get me on, I will make time.
I appreciate that. Hey, hang on really quick, okay? I want to catch up with you after the show, all right?
All righty. Sounds
good. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.